Okay, welcome everyone. I think we are just waiting for a few more folks to join. I'm just going to give it another minute here just to make sure we're all here.
Hi, it's Terry. I'm just on my phone, so I'm not going to share my video. I can't get
That's
the
fine, Terry.
meeting to come up. Okay, thanks.
And just a reminder to all our presenters here today, if you can just keep your mic muted unless you are talking. I think there's going to be a number of us here, so. Okay. Just looking at the attendee list, see if there's anybody else. Okay, great. We're 2 minutes after 5. So I'd like to get this started. I've invited Ida Mary Peter to join us as well, and I'd like to actually pass it over to her to provide a traditional opening for us here today before we get started.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Ida Mary Peter, Ida Mary Peter and Chquachicha Chilatmukan. So I said, hello, everybody. Hello, my friends and relatives. My name is Ida Mary Peter, and I'm from Chilat. And thank you for this opportunity. I've never had this opportunity before to do this, and I think it's awesome. So the land that these wildfires took place on is the Ch'ulatmach traditional territory, where the descendants of the people that came from Green Lake after the Great Flood. We became a numerous people, and one of our great chiefs selected a group of our people to go and find the best place to live and raise families. We moved to this area, and we are known from the beginning of time as the Lakes people, Ch'ulatmach. We are the deer, mountain goat, bighorn sheep, moose, swan, crane, and spring salmon people. Our territory extends to the end of Seton Lake, as is known today, over Mission Mountain, up the Bridge River Valley to Bridge Glaciers, Braylorn, Gun Lake, Marshall Lake, Mud Lakes, Spruce Lake, and Relay Mountain areas. We were once a numerous people of 20,000 before epidemics came. We still live on our territory, gathering foods and medicines. Our present population is about 700. I just want to thank you, thank you folks for the opportunity to do a traditional opening. And we look forward to working with you, with all of you. And I know how much effort it takes to bring this many people together from all these different backgrounds and everything. It's just from all over, and I think that it's pretty incredible that we can do this by virtual meetings now. And so thanks to the organizers that brought everybody together here. And I just wanted to say that I know that a lot of our community members, they suffered through the summer, through all the evacuations, and there's a lot of stress and trauma, and the lives were disrupted, and there's so many different struggles that people have still today and had during the summer. And just want to acknowledge all the hard work of everyone, that all the efforts that many people have put together to um to help people and to help protect the land from more fires and protect people's homes and livelihoods and that. And it hasn't went unnoticed, not in our community anyways, and we're pretty thankful. So I just wanted to sing you a song that's from our community here, from the nation. And it's a song about when people are walking on the land and they're all fired up on the land and they're looking for something good in their life. And they're walking the earth and they're looking for good, always looking for goodness wherever you go. So, and I tell people that this song is not only sung just when you're walking on the trails or in the mountains, but you could be walking downtown somewhere, anywhere, because anywhere on the earth you could be looking for good things. And so it goes like this. Hey na, 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 hey na. Wal kändet mi wa ken huilem wish ama. Hey na, hey na, hey na, hey na. Nat kändet mi wa ken huilem wish ama. Hey na, hey na, hey na, hey na. Hey na, 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 hey na. So I hope that that helps you and puts everybody in the spirit of this meeting. I know there's lots of topic and subjects that you're going to be touching on and lots of presentations, and I hope that we all can be working together. And I just want to apologize. I can't stay because my daughter's also doing a yoga training class from 5 to 7, so I have to get home and look after the kids. So I appreciate this,
Nice.
and I will see you again tomorrow. Yeah.
Great.
Kukstumka.
Thank you so much for that. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
So with that, my name's Matt Antrite. I'm the Director for Provincial Community Recovery in the Southwest within the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. Our role at EMCR is to ensure we have disaster resilient BC, and that includes, but it's not limited to, supporting communities, regional districts, local governments, as well as coordinating the activities to support recovery at the provincial level. As you're all aware, last year we experienced one of the worst wildfire seasons on record across our province. These wildfires have left a devastating impact on our land and our lives. Tonight we're here to present the results of a comprehensive post-wildfire natural hazard risk assessment, which has been conducted by Rod Williams over at On-Site Engineering. Our objective this evening is to share the results of this geotechnical assessment with the community so that residents can understand the associated risk and take the necessary steps to ensure long-term safety of their property. I want to be clear that the purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide you with information about the findings from that post-wildfire natural hazard risk assessment. Tonight's town hall will be focused solely on the results of that assessment, which include an overview of the potential hazards that the community may face. We understand that many of you may have questions of how these hazards could impact your personal situations or properties, and you might have specific questions or concerns about the recovery process more broadly. We will have a Q&A session following the presentation, and we'll let you know. We want to let you know that we will be unable to provide specific answers to questions about individual properties or circumstances this evening. If you do have specific questions, we will be sharing in the Q&A chat some contact information. So please take a look at that if you do have specific questions and follow up with those folks directly. In a moment, I'm going to start introducing and welcoming the colleagues that we have here tonight, and let them provide a quick overview of some of their activities. We'll then pass it over to Rod Williams, who will provide a presentation on that post-wildfire natural hazard risk assessment. After that, we will move into questions specifically on that report. So I'd like to start with questions that folks might have on that geotechnical assessment. After that, we can move into broader questions, and you'll see the representatives that we have on the line tonight. After we sorry, just taking a look at some of my notes here. So after we've heard from the panel and have that Q&A session, we'll answer as many questions as we can. I'll pass it over to Chris, who will provide a brief presentation on how you can actually access the Q&A and ask those questions. As I mentioned earlier, you may have questions or concerns on your specific property, and unfortunately, we won't be able to get into all those details. This is going to be more broadly focused on that post-wildfire natural hazard risk assessment. If you do have, or when you are asking a question, please do not include any personal information, as we are recording this session as well, and we'll be making it available to everyone afterwards. So maybe with that, I'll pass it over to Chris to show the Q&A function, and then from there, I'll pass it over to you, Jen, for some opening remarks as well. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen here. And why I can't see there. There we go. So I'm just going to go over a real quick overview of how to use the Q&A, what it looks like from the attendee point of view, and kind of a couple of the features there. So you'll notice it's in the top bar here, right beside the chat button. The chat will look like this with the chat text input disabled. We've just turned it off for this meeting to keep things focused, and through the Q&A is how we'll be discussing any questions or issues. So in the Q&A section, you should see a little thing, a little box like this. If you click on Start a Discussion, that's how you get into the text entry section for asking a question. This is all the desktop and laptop view, by the way. We also have turned on the option for anonymous posts. So you'll see a little toggle there at the bottom of the text box. It's off by default, so make sure if you want to be posting anonymously that you have this this little toggle checked on. So questions asked anonymously will show up basically with no picture, no name. But one thing to note is reactions and comments to anonymous questions will be attributed to your profile. So just something to be aware of. Then I also grabbed the mobile view. So if you're joining us on a mobile device, this is likely what the Q&A section will look like. Again, this it'll have a little checkbox for posting anonymously if you so desire. Make sure that if you want your post to be anonymous, your question to be anonymous, to check that little checkbox there, and it should show up to us as anonymous. If folks want to have captions, there is that option as well to have live transcription. You just hit this little 3 dots, more options, and the turn on live captions is in the language and speech box here. So if you hover over, click language and speech and turn on live captions, a little box in the bottom of your screen should open up with live transcription. And then we also have, just in case folks are having any audio issues, you can try exiting the Teams call and rejoining. Alternatively, you can also check in that More section. There's the device settings under settings. And this is what that device settings section will look like. So just make sure that you have the volume turned up, that that you have sound coming through there. So, and yeah, that's it. I'll pass back to Matt.
Thanks, Chris. And with that, I'll actually pass it over to Jen, if you would like to say a few words.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Ford, and I am the chair of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. And I'm very grateful to be calling in today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Lillooet Nation and the Squamish Nation. And I'm really grateful to all of you who have joined us tonight from whichever area you are calling in from. I would also like to acknowledge all of the staff from all of the ministries that are here. We are here to acknowledge that the 2023 wildfire season was extremely challenging for our province, our region, and especially for the communities of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. The impact that these wildfires had on our community continue to have and are continuing to have with us as we recover and continue to learn more about the broader impacts. The Squamish-Lillooet Regional District continues to work collaboratively across SLRD departments with our province, Indigenous communities, and community partners to address the ongoing impacts of last season. We know that last season was not an anomaly, and we recognize that there is work to do moving forward into this next season. I'd like to thank Emergency Management and Climate Readiness for organizing and hosting this town hall tonight, and for all of the organizations and staff who have made themselves available to be here. We'd like to sincerely thank all of you for joining us tonight. And if you are watching this as a recording after the fact, thank you for your interest, and please be in touch with us with ministry staff who are making themselves available not only through this process, but on a broader scale. And we're looking forward to hearing what the post-wildfire natural hazard risk assessment report has to say, and really just acknowledge the work of everyone continuing to persevere as we continue through this recovery journey. Tonight we have Jay McEwen, our senior building official here. We have Kim Needham, our director of building and planning, Mark Phillips, our director of protective services, Jaya Bremer, our recovery unit coordinator, and Omar Butt, who is our Director of Environmental Services. Thank you to all of you who are here, and to all staff who have been working tirelessly on these recovery efforts, and to our board for supporting the work that our staff have done. We do look forward to answering your questions. We will get to that after the presentation. And I do ask that everyone please remember that this is being recorded, so people will be watching this after, and anything that is said is a part of our public record. So please be mindful and respectful of the people who have been impacted, and to really, this is not an easy situation, and we're very, very grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jen. So from EMCR, I introduced myself. We also have Rachel Ratcliffe, who is a manager for community recovery in the Southwest, Sophie Lamar, who is a community recovery coordinator in the Southwest, as well as Chris Jones, who is, oh, I cut out there. But we also have Chris Jones, who's also with EMCR. Also, my colleague from the Central Region, David Rice, is also the Director for Community Recovery in the Central Region. He's joining us as well. From Forest, I'll pass it over to you, Trevor, to introduce the folks from Forest, and then Ryan, if you can introduce the folks from Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. My name is Trevor Bohe. I'm Director of All Hazard Response Coordination for the Ministry of Forests South Area, Assistant Deputy Minister's Office. And then joining me are my colleagues from the Cascades Forest District. I suspect you may know these gentlemen, but we have Greg Van Rossum, who is our resource manager at the Cascades Forest District, and then BJ Moore, engineering technician and our lead for fire guard rehab for the area. Thanks.
Sure, and hi everyone. My name's Ryan Edmonds. I'm a geotechnical engineer with the Ministry of Transportation, and I am joined by two colleagues, Brandon Klingbeil, who is the operations manager for the Caribou District Operations. He's based in 100 Mile House, and we're also joined by Brad Beaupre, who is the road area manager based out of Lillooet. And those two are operations based, and I am part of our engineering services group, which provides services and support to operations. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Ryan. With that, I will now pass it over to Rod Williams from On-Site Engineering, and we can go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Hey, thank you, Matt. I'll just start our slideshow and then share my screen. So maybe if you could just confirm that you can see everything as I start it up here.
There we
Okay,
go.
can you see that
Looks
now
good.
as full screen?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, introductions. My name is Rod Williams. I work with On-Site Engineering out of Salmon Arm. And we were retained by the Ministry of Forest to complete the post-wildfire natural hazard risk assessment for the Casper Creek wildfire. This work was okay. So as a bit of a background, Casper Creek fire burned approximately 11,000 hectares surrounding Seton, Anderson, Carpenter Lakes. It was started by lightning, natural causes. Prior to this fire, in the Whitecap drainage, there was a fire in 2004. That's what the photo in this slide is showing, that burned approximately 21 hectares in the upper Whitecap Creek watershed. So the area is fairly heavily impacted with these two events, spaced roughly 20 years apart. The assessment was commissioned in 2023 with a bit of background work, and then we completed field work in October. The fieldwork for it included a helicopter overview flight of the entire area. And then we spent approximately 4 days ground traversing the area, primarily through ATV and driving with localized foot traverses. The fieldwork was focused on review of soil and vegetation burn severity within the fire area. It included numerous soil test pits and evaluation of the soils to determine the extent and frequency of hydrophobic soils in the area. We also completed a review of stream channels and fan areas, as well as road drainage structures within and downstream of impacted areas. And in addition to the helicopter flight, we also collected on our last day a number of images with a drone for low elevation photographs. This is just a general map of the area that was impacted. Can you see my mouse all right if I move it around? Pointing on this.
There's a bit of delay with the mouse.
Okay.
Rod. Or at least there is on my screen.
Okay, well, looking at the map, I'll kind of start in the southwest corner, which is the area around the Highline Road that accesses Seton Portage from the west. Moving east of that and north is the Whitecap Creek drainage, which is this area up here. And then moving to the east of that, there's a face unit with a number of streams that descend down towards Seton Portage. We'll talk about those. Moving beyond that, you get into the Mission Mountain Road, which is the primary access to Seton Portage from Lillooet. And then that road extends up and across Mission Mountain, which was fairly heavily impacted by the event, down towards Carpenter Lake, and onto the Mission Dam Road, which flows along the lake shore and then out towards Lillooet. And then also there's Road 40 that extends along Carpenter Lake on the north side. And the fire extended over to that area as well and impacted those watersheds. So the methodology that we follow is in a risk assessment is basically following Land Management Handbook 69, which was published in 2015 in the Ministry of Forests. And it defines hazard and risk in that document. Hazard is the processes and situations and actions or non-actions that have potential to damage, harm, or cause adverse effects between other things of value. It can be expressed in qualitative terms or probabilistic quantitative terms. Risk is a combination of the magnitude and probability of adverse effects based on the likelihood of something happening in consequence. So with this, in this context, post-wildfire hazards that we're considering are erosion, sediment transport, which leads to debris flows, debris floods, debris slides, as well as you can also get increased likelihoods of rock falls and or snow avalanches. This slide in the image that I have displayed there kind of captures some of this, with the upslope areas being the hazard source areas that we were assessing, and the downstream elements of risk being cabins alongside Whitecap Creek, as well as access roads in that area, utility infrastructure. So further to the methodology, our assessment includes a qualitative partial risk assessment that follows the approach in another land management handbook published, or the same management handbook published in 2015. And this just gives a little more detail that partial risk is basically the probability or occurrence of the hazardous event and the probability of it reaching the element of risk. So using the matrix above, we have our likelihood of it reaching the element on the top, and then our hazard rating along the left-hand side. Finding those comes up with the qualitative risk value that we determine. In order to, we had to come up with a kind of a consistent method to evaluate the hazard within the watersheds and the base units. And from that, we borrowed on a methodology from some recent reports by BGC that have looked at the wildfires in the Shuswap area. And what we have is basically, it's a burn severity index, which basically allows us to look at watersheds and look at how much of the watershed was burned at a high, moderate, or very high burn severity, and then compare or tabulate that with the watershed area and get a relative burn severity index for each watershed. And then with that, we determined a hydrogeomorphic process index, which basically looks at whether the watershed is prone to just flooding or whether it is prone to debris flows and debris floods at the opposite of the spectrum. And one of the methodology we use to determine whether it's a water flood event or a debris flow event is a Melton ratio, they call it. And it's basically an index used to assess the ruggedness of a basin, basically how steep it is, what the elevation change is, in relation to how big of an area it is. So basically, we have a relatively small watershed with a lot of relief, going to be prone to, it's going to have a higher Melton ratio. And research has shown that those watersheds are generally more prone to debris flows. As you get a larger watershed with less relief, those watersheds are more prone to flooding. And many of them fall kind of in between both of those. So a bit on the vegetation and burn severity. assessment that we do. Vegetation burn severity is basically what you can see. It's wildfire can go through on the ground and you still have a green or brown canopy left. That's going to be a low to moderate burn severity. Where the wildfire has gone through and completely consumed the canopy and all you have is scorched stems left, that's your high vegetation burn severity. And that is determined through, or that is assessed initially through satellite photography, and a burn severity map is produced, which was shown on the map that I showed at the start. And then through our assessment, we completed a number of field checks, kind of confirming that the mapping was correct. The mapping can vary. We found that some of the mapping that was produced in September did differ from that produced later on in October, just with changes in reflection. So that burn severity mapping was provided by the MOF. And then the second part of it is the soil burn severity. So that's looking at how much the soil was impacted by the wildfire event. If a wildfire goes through rapidly through the crown, it may not have that much of an effect on the soil, versus a slower moving ground fire might have a greater effect on the soils versus the canopy. So the soil burn severity was tested in the field through visual observations and water repellency tests in small HUNDEC test pits. So that's basically, this is one of our sites here at the top photo that we looked at the soils, and the close up in the bottom is what we're looking at below the duff layer, looking at the water repellency in those soils through a water drop test. So the different classes of soil burn severity: high, the forest floor is consumed, mineral soil has altered porosity and structure, soil is highly likely to develop hydrophobicity, and we did see that in quite a few areas. Moderate, litter is consumed, depth is consumed. Mineral soil is unchanged and they may develop hydrophobicity, and then a low is scorched, but not a deep burn into it, unlikely to develop hydrophobicity. And then, yeah, summary, much of the burn area is found high soil burn severity. Hydrophobic soils were encountered. And then the concern with that is hydrophobic soils limits infiltration and increases surface runoff and overland flow and subsequent soil erosion during precipitation events. I think everyone has access to the report, so it has basically all the details of the assessment, but this is just one clip showing how this worked. Basically have a watershed that we've defined. It has stream length and relief, melt number of 0.91, which indicates degree flow. Then we looked at the burn severity index. Amount of percentage of the watershed burned at high was 22%, low 21, moderate 41, 17% remained unburned. Gives us a burn severity index of 25. And from that, we come up with our qualitative hazard likelihood. And in this watershed in particular, the debris flow could extend down to the Highline Road, potentially washing out the road, and then extend further down slope to developments on the debris flow fan on that Pacific. So within our report, every watershed and face units that we broke out has a row in a table like this with these details. And from that, if you have a property that's impacted within that watershed assessment came up with, and then adjacent to that, we have our recommendations. So I'll just talk about, we broke our report up into kind of areas within the fire. And the first area that we considered and looked at was along the Highline Road. The Highline Road was identified as a fairly significant concern to the residents in City Portage, as it's one of their main access routes. And it's, you know, most people here have probably driven it. It's a fairly steep and concerning road. So any impact on it by mass wasting events is a concern. So within the Highline Road area, we basically found lower burn severity in the west and moderate to high burn severity in the east. Debris flows are the dominant process within those watersheds. The watersheds included 6 Mile Creek right on the western extent of the fire, watershed H2, H1, and then H2, which is Casper Creek. And then we had a H2 face unit, Sunquist Creek, watershed H3, and 2 more face units. Generally, what we found on that in this area is we were out there during November. It was a atmospheric river event that was actually in the media forecasted and tracked. And we did see quite a bit of water on the road. And that's basically with the wildfire conditions, you can expect increased runoff due to less uptake of precipitation by vegetation above. The other thing we noticed on the far eastern end would be increased rockfall activity, as well as smaller debris slurries within these smaller watersheds out here. Just a few, try and provide as many photos. I think it's the easiest way to see it. A few more images here that we captured from the helicopter. This is basically the western extent of the fire. 6 Mile Creek on the left side of the left photo. Smaller watershed H1 beside it. And the Highline Road extends roughly along the power line there at the bottom of the photo. Top right photo is kind of the road runoff we witnessed in October, ponding, flowing down over the road shoulder. So yeah, quite a bit of water there from it rained for a good day, but it wasn't that significant. The bottom photo there is moving east through this area. Although this area is mapped as moderate to high burn severity, a lot of it is fairly steep, rocky, not a lot of soils. We aren't expecting a lot of debris flows or mass wasting on that, but rockfall activity could increase. Some of the recommendations that we presented in our report, and we did have a bit of a discussion with the regional district back in November on this. What we found was there's a number of drainage structures. Some of them look fairly well sized and adequate for the stream. Others did appear to be quite small. So one of our recommendations was a more detailed review by stakeholders of that road to look at road drainage structures, make sure they're actually functional now, and that they're sized for potential increased flows following the wildfire. Within the Casper Creek watershed, we recommended a more detailed assessment. The reflow likelihood was assessed as high through our qualitative assessment, and there is potential there for post-wildfire events. And you also have private land development down on the fan that could be a potential risk. Any future residential development should be subject to a landside hazard assessment for the private properties on downslope in this area. Rainfall shutdown procedures were implemented in the wildfire we worked on down in Boston Bar, Kukupee. And we did suggest that maybe something like that be looked at for this road as well, particularly forecasted extreme events. And then for those residents that are pulling domestic water supply out of these streams, that water intake infrastructure and water quality is monitored for extended period. Secondary to discuss, that's of fairly significant importance to the community of Seton Portage is Whitecap Creek. This watershed has been prone to past debris flood events. It occurred in 2015 and 2016. And a fairly detailed study completed in 2018 by BGC, I think, noted an earlier history as well. It's a very large watershed, lots of alpine terrain, lots of snow accumulation, significant freshet flows, as well as rainfall-induced flows have occurred in the past. 30% of the watershed is now burned. Water to high burn severity on much of the lower watershed facing slopes. The fire did not extend too far to the west up into the alpine terrain. And fortunately, a lot of the riparian area, which you can see in this slide, is follow the stream path down. You can see a lot of green mapping to yellow mapping. That's the unburned to low burn severity. So quite a bit of the riparian area is still intact, but there is significant areas of high burn severity on the slopes above that. There is a large exposed till slope that is directly upslope of the canyon and falls, which is some significant sediment supply that may be a significant contributor to the debris flows that have occurred. And there's also going to be a fairly high debris flow hazard on these steeper tributary streams that are impacted by the fire. Those may result in increased sediment supply into the stream and are potentially damming with small outburst flows. So basically the flood and debris flood hazard that we had before is still there, but it's more than likely now worse from the impacts of the fire. A few photos, that's the large eroding till slope that's supplying sediment to the stream. This is directly above the falls and directly below the Whitecap FSR. This is the area, this is the upper Whitecap Creek drainage. So the upper part of this photo is the area that was burned in 2004. And you can see that the 2023 fire burned into that area and overlapped, burning some of the area that was regenerating. The road through the watershed has been washed out. That's the remains of the bridge in the upper watershed. Can no longer get across the stream. We were able to ATV up to that bridge, but much of the road is covered in rocks and boulders, debris. It hasn't been deactivated, but it's small. These images are from the BGC report of 2018, showing the impacts of the 2015 or the 2016 debris flood event on the Whitecap. You can see in the left-hand photo, Whitecap Creek flows in the middle of the photo, avulsed out of its banks, sediment deposition, aggregation leading up to the bridge over the Portage River. This completely blocked the road and the bridge. And you can see on the left side of this slide, or the right side of this slide, top left photo is before. So the left photos are before, and after that event, you can see that it completely filled in the Portage River. So events like 2015 and 2016 of this magnitude can be expected to continue to occur, and potentially to a greater extent following on. Right-hand side of this slide is just another aerial image we caught of the drone of the same area. So this is the Whitecap Creek Canyon coming down this from the top of the photo. You have the bridge over the Portage River heading out towards the Highline Road, and the channel of Whitecap Creek off to the right-hand side. So some of the recommendations we made in our report were, we looked at the BGC report of 2018 and reiterated some of those recommendations. They had recommendations for the design and installation of deflection berms along Whitecap Creek between the Whitecap Campground and Anderson Lake Road Bridge, which would be running through this area here, if you can see my mouse. Armoring the south bank of the Portage River below the confluence of Whitecap Creek so that to mitigate erosion should the stream flow start to erode into the railway and roadway embankment. potentially look at raising the Anderson Lake Bridge to increase its resiliency. Could also look at, I think one end is founded on piles, but the other end might be on standard abutments. Consider both of them on piles and raising it. One limitation of that is the railway crossing grade, which doesn't allow much of a change unless you were to look at a complete rail line. One of the main recommendations in their report and reiterated in ours is basically preparing to have heavy equipment on site to brief sediment deposits and clear roads during forecasted extreme precipitation events. As discussed, there's that large till slope above the canyon is a significant sediment source. We did suggest a more detailed review of the channel upstream of the canyon to get some idea of where the source area for the debris floods is. Are they coming through the entire stream system, or are they picking up most of their sediment within that at the base of that open slope, as well as the area below the falls, to gain a better understanding of what can be expected. The Whitecap FSR, as I said, is not deactivated, but it's no longer passable by vehicle. We would recommend a review of that road to either develop a deactivation plan or upgrade plan one way or another to ensure that it doesn't add to any of the hazard. Additionally, within Whitecap, salvage harvesting is a way, if it's done appropriately and properly, to speed up the regeneration within the watershed and hydrological recovery. So it would be worthwhile for the Ministry of Forest to look at what areas may be feasible and plan some salvage harvesting. And if not, then hopefully some sort of silviculture activities to accelerate regeneration. One area of concern at the outlet of Whitecap Creek is there within this red box here, there are, let me go back to this slide. Yeah, within this area here on the right side of the photo, there's 3 cabins presently within this area. And in the event of an event coming down Whitecap Creek, you could lose access to those cabins and the office building there. So you probably want to develop some sort of plan for emergency egress going out the other way. This is the Whitecap FSR. It's a fairly steep road, but you could potentially improve that to improve the egress for those residences. As well as a campground directly down slope, you look at temporary closures of that until recovery has occurred, particularly during October, the winter season. Third area we kind of broke out in our assessment was called in the Seaton Portage base units. So basically, community of Seaton Portage is down here. The road heading out to the BC Hydro facility and beyond is just right there on the right side. And we have a number of streams that are mapped coming down. We looked at all of these streams, where they cross the road, looked at the drainage structures. Some of them were not flowing, some of them are flowing. We looked at it's called Road 1 up at the top here, but it's basically the BC Hydro power line access road across the top of this area. We looked at all the drainage structures along that road, looked at the watershed areas above it. The face unit up at the top, as you can see by the red, was very significantly burnt. But fortunately in this area, we have steeper streams at the top that come down to a mid-slope bench and then descend a second steep confined gully. And then the lower area is quite low gradient, where deposition would most likely occur. So you can see that here. There's the BC Hydro road up top, steep face unit below it, and size draws, but then there's quite a long bend or gentle gradient bench where we don't run out of any events that occur from upslope. So just in summary, high burn severity in the west, as we saw in the previous slide, low to moderate in the east. Free flows, dominant hydrogeomorphic process expected. But we would expect to run out of a low gradient reach above sea portage. One concern that was identified us was the Steel Mountain Community School, and how is there potential for impact of that? But that school is actually located on a terrace, at least 60 meters higher than Cedar Creek and Almond Brook stream channels, and debris flows would pass either side of that and not expected to be structure. Another view of the same area. You can see the steep terrain at the top of the right-hand photo, power line going along the mid-slope bench, the steeper gullies below it, and then we have these low gradient runout areas down below that. The left-hand photo is just one of the areas that we stopped in, just kind of show the characteristics of those lower gradient reaches down lower, where there was no surface flow within here. It's completely unconfined and gentle gradient. So any events from above would rapidly deposit. Let's get back down to the city. And then the recommendations, there wasn't a lot in this area, but essentially looking at the upper road, there's quite a few drainage structures up there that appeared fairly small. Could be overwhelmed with increased flows coming off the wildfire area. So I think that's BC Hydro's road up there. They should be looking at the road network to ensure the road drainage structures are functional, or deactivate the roads through installation of cross stitches that goes through the process. Again, this area, if done properly and in appropriate areas, salvage harvesting may help accelerate some of the forest regeneration of the slopes. Moving to the east of the BC Hydro facility, we have the Mission Mountain Road that extends up over Mission Mountain. And then we have the South Carpenter FSR that extends off of that road prior to it descending down to the Mission Dam Road. Within this area, that's a view from the helicopter of the face. This is the Mission Mountain Road and climbing up the face and over the top. Low to moderate burn severity on the south face, higher burn severity on the north face, going over the saddle. Previous debris flow on watershed MM3. That was a small event that occurred within this watershed coming down the side of the BC Hydro facility. As our understanding that it did result in some sediment deposition on the road. That watershed was burned. It's a small watershed, but it was burned fairly extensively. Climbing up the road towards the top within the areas that were moderate to high burn severity, expecting the surface runoff, causing graveling, ditch line infilling, more frequent small rockfall. Going over the top of Mission Mountain Road, you see it better on the next slide, but coming down the north aspect slopes, there was a number of areas where trees and stumps that look like they've been supporting road fill have burned out, resulting in some cavities and some graveling on the fill slope. Sea Creek, which is above the community of Shalaf, over on the right-hand side of this photo. That creek has had debris flows in the past, but fortunately this fire event only burned a small area of the upper watershed. So not expecting a significant increase in reflow activity above the background level within that watershed. There's another view here. This is the Mission Mountain Road just descending down towards Carpenter Lake. The South Carpenter FSR is up at the top of this photo, in the middle. Called this watershed SC1 in our assessment. It was burned quite extensively, as you can see. Both the lower watershed and the upper was pretty much all in the high burn severity. So this area can be expected to have significantly increased runoff during precipitation events, and as well as sediment mobilization. When we were out there, there was survey stakes already in place by another consultant that BC Hydro had hired. So I think BC Hydro is already looking at this concern and hopefully addressing it. So our recommendations for the Mission Mountain area was basically development of maintenance upgrade plan for the road to affect to rehabilitate the fire impacted areas. Through the Mission Pass specifically, detailed review to ensure the road drainage measures are functional, accurately sized. Fill slope reconstruction where wood support is burnt. And then increased frequency of inspections during extreme events. Again, where appropriate and where properly done, salvage harvesting could play a role in more rapid regeneration of some of the forest stands. But again, it needs to be done properly and where appropriate. We also suggested rainfall shutdown procedures may want to be considered for the pass. In some of this area, if there is a big event forecasted, it's probably better that residents stay down within the seed and forage and slab communities rather than trying to head out over this program. Just a quick note, South Carpenter FSR is just the FSR that extends above this, as we discussed. There is some high burn severity above that road. The mountain ratio and assessments we've done, look at the debris flows are the most likely process, and with high to very high likelihood within these watersheds SC 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are kind of moving left to right across this slide. Events in that events from below the road within those watersheds could impact the Mission Mountain events. So we found the road is generally in good condition, but must be maintained or a deactivation plan developed and implemented. Same comment again about solvent harvesting about that. Moving north, we called this area, we have the Mission Dam Road, which extends along the south side of Carpenter Lake, out past the Mission Dam and out towards Lillooet. Quite a number of watersheds were impacted here. Most of them are fairly steep and rocky. We don't foresee a lot of impacts of the wildfire, but there is one in particular near the beginning of that road that comes down from Mission Mountain Road, where there is much higher likelihood of free flow events to impact. Road 40, or the Lillooet Pioneer Road. On the north side, we identified 4 watersheds there that all had varying levels of burn, plus the face units. So these, we have recommendations for those drainage structures there as well. For the Mission Dam Road on the south side, varying burn severity, recent debris flow on watershed, we called it MD4, which is this one kind of extending down through the middle of this photo. That one impacted Mission Dam Road in the past, and there is a bit of a berm and stuff built there, but future events of that could still impact the road. Again, debris floods and debris flows are the dominant processes. Certainly rockfall, as we all know, on these face units. You can expect an increase in rockfall, increase in debris slurries, increase in debris flows. Again, we recommend a detailed review of the road to ensure the drainage structures are functional and adequately sized. Consider a bit more of a debris flow mitigation structure at 4 and enclosure of the associated recreation center. And again, within this area, we'll consider rainfall shutdown. Road 40, just one photo there of the kind of the slopes above. They weren't significantly impacted. There was some pockets of fairly high current severity, kind of the upper parts of these watersheds, but generally throughout most of the study area, this was probably the least impacted. But again, the watersheds, characteristics of the watersheds all lend themselves to debris flow events. I expect that the likelihood of those events is increased following the fire. Culverts we inspected appeared adequate for the water flows, but they will not handle debris. So increased frequency of inspections of these structures prior to following storm events. And also rainfall shutdown and maybe consider along this road. So that kind of sums up our summary of the areas. Guess we open up to any specific questions
Yeah.
on the work we've done.
Thank you, Rod. Yeah, so there's a few questions that have started coming in. I've published the first one. So Whitecap Creek and other areas, how would salvage harvesting speed up the forest regeneration? What does done properly mean with regard to salvage harvesting? Trevor, I think you were going to respond to that one.
Yeah, I put a couple of points in the chat there that I hope address the person's question. I'm not sure, Greg, if you have anything you'd like to add that I may have missed in those 2 points. I think the important thing is, yeah, I mean, salvage, does need to be done correctly. Modern salvage is not done to the standards that logging was done in the past. It's done to sort of modern standards with careful consideration to, I guess, the potential impact that the salvage might have, including, if required, terrain stability assessments to be done by the licensee, prior to undertaking that work. So it's not a free for all. I want people just to realize that all the requirements that would have been in place for modern logging are still in place for salvage logging.
Great. Thanks, Trevor. There's another question. Is there a process to follow up on the recommendations? So I assume those are recommendations that Rod has highlighted in his presentation, such as a yearly review, and then share it with the communities. Trevor, do you want to start with a response on that one?
Yeah, certainly for some of these recommendations, if they're within the, each entity that I guess has a responsibility for an aspect of the recommendations, be it a section of road or, an FSR or a recommendation around salvage harvesting, those entities, maybe Ministry of Transportation and maybe Ministry of Forests, but they'll be considering these recommendations that were put forth by on-site and moving forward with those that are practical or that we're able to move forward on, and definitely putting a plan in place to monitor the work that's been undertaken in that respect. Should say as well that we do have, through EMCR, there is a community recovery table that is ongoing with the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, and that is sort of the venue for your local government to liaise with the provincial government on, how some of these things are going to be actioned.
Thanks, Trevor. Is there anybody else that wanted to add any comments on that question? Okay. Next question, and Rod, I think this is likely going to be for you. So with respect to the soil testing, to what depth or depths was the soil tested? Was a mini disc in full meter used?
No, the mini, we do not use a mini disc. It's more of a just a water drop test. And the hydrophobic soil layers are generally right near the surface. So they're just below the duct layer in kind of the upper mineral soil. Once you dig down about a foot or not even, and you test the soil below that, you don't see the hydrophobicity. Hydrophobicity is in the upper layers.
And there's likely another question for you here as well, Rod. How did you determine that South Carpenter was in good condition? There's no access beyond about 7 kilometers.
South Carpenter, we drove it. And yeah, you can drive right to the extent of the fire. The fire didn't go beyond 7 miles.
Okay. There's a comment here, Trevor, for a follow-up on the salvaging. So fires on the south side of Seton Lake were not salvaged and done well. Any harvesting would need approval from the local First Nation community, as it's their territory.
Yeah, that's correct. These plans always go out to our local First Nations for consultation. That's that's the procedure, and it would be followed going forward.
And there's one more comment on the recommendation. So good report, terrible news. Would like to hear more about how recommendations can be followed up, and are invasive weeds not even more at risk with salvage logging? So there's 2 parts there. So Trevor, I don't know if you want to talk any more about the recommendations. As you mentioned, Ministry of Forest as well as the regional district are standing up land-based recovery tables, and that is likely going to be the forum where these recommendations can be brought forward. As far as a feedback loop back to the communities, I don't think we've gotten to a point yet with those tables on determining how we will be able to come back to a community. But that's certainly something that we can take away and ensure that we do incorporate that feedback loop.
Yeah, and just to address the comment on the invasive weeds, yeah, certainly. But in this case, if there were salvage logging done, then the licensee would be required to undertake a replanting regime, right? And so that would mitigate the concern for invasive weeds.
Thank you. Just there's another question here on the rainfall shutdown procedure. Has there been a rainfall shutdown procedure drafted yet? I'm not too sure if that would be with Force or Ryan over at Transportation, if you had anything.
Yeah, that would be our Ministry of Transportation based question. I'd like to defer that over to Brandon Klingbeil with our operations group. He's able to provide some comment on that.
For sure. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yes, we utilize, at least at the local level, a collection of local forecasts and in-field observations to make decisions surrounding proactive and reactive closures. So we've utilized that to more recent success on Road 40 just late last year. So enacted that, and the process is continually developing as well as we receive new information and new checks and balances. So there is something in place, and we have been working on what that looks like moving forward.
see if there's any other questions. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions with respect to the natural hazard risk assessment in the presentation that Rod did come through. Trevor?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to indicate as well that you know, we will be embarking on a program of installing signage in conjunction with our partners at MOTI and even consulting SLRD on the appropriate location to put warning signage up. You know, I think one of the key things that we can do, you know, with regard to the risk from this, you know, this situation is really to inform the public. Just want to let people know that they should start seeing some informational signage going up. And as the roads are assessed, there may even be, in addition to informational signage, also, you know, warning signage if appropriate.
Yeah, and I think just from the Ministry of Transportation's perspective, just to add to what Trevor's mentioned, we are currently working on a review of the existing signs, and based on the findings of this report and our own observations, putting together some additions that will be put in place this year.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Trevor. There's another question here. Was the situation with Camus Creek? Could this be presented with recommendations, please? Rod, do you know if this was specifically within your report? Defer to you on that initially. Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah, Camus, we did fly up into the upper area of Camus Creek. That was brought up in one of our meetings ahead of fieldwork. The fire didn't really impact very much area at all up there. It was just on the fringe of that. So the kind of the watershed area impact was very small.
Let's give it another second here, see if there's any other final questions. Or maybe I can open it up and see if they're, you know, with the representation of folks that you do have around on this meeting, are there broader questions that people want to raise at this time? Recognizing the intent was really to focus on this geotechnical report. However, if there are additional questions, we can try and answer those now.
I can just add to this here, Matt. I'll share my screen again.
Oh, thanks.
You can see this.
Sure.
This is Camus Creek area flowing down to the east from the fire perimeter. And it's just this small area within here that kind of just went to the height of land.
What'd you guess?
But this area flows
Ooh,
out.
I guessed him
towards
too. That's
there.
how I actually led to the guy I got.
Can you keep your mics muted? Sorry, Rod.
So anyhow, this watershed here flows out towards the west here, heading to Bridge River. So yeah, it was just the very top end of Camus where it just touched. We have aerial photos of that too that show that area. But yeah, it didn't really do it.
Thanks, Rod. There's another comment here, and this is feeding off of what you were talking about, Ryan. So I'm wondering, after hearing about the signage by Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure, as I also thought of that. If each one of the organizations could produce an update from the report. I can start with a response on that one, and if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. But I think this is going to be going through the land-based recovery tables. A lot of those recommendations are flowing from here. They're going to be land-based recommendations where we would be referring mostly to Forest and Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure with respect to that signage. So I think there's going to be multiple partners and organizations working on producing an update. It's not just going to be one organization that really owns all those recommendations as they're identified, but really a shared commitment from everyone to address those. Okay, is there any final questions from anybody on the line? We'll get another 30 seconds or so here. See if anything comes through. There was. With the concept of restoration and the focus for slope stability, what are some generalized options being considered? Trevor, would you want to jump in on that? Or Rod, I don't know if either of you would be able to speak to that one.
Sure. I mean, I'll start, and if anyone else wants to jump in, then feel free. So we have been talking about this in the background. For example, I talked to Rod a couple of weeks ago, and we mulled over the idea, for example, of treatments. So things like aerial seeding, mulching, that kind of thing. The jury is really out on the effectiveness of these treatments to reduce the potential for debris flow or landslide. There's not a lot of evidence that it works. We have tried it in other areas. We've done aerial seeding, for example, in the Highway 8 corridor following the 2021 wildfires, and we still ended up with debris flows in that area. But that said, things like that aren't off the table. So as we embark on these land-based recovery discussions, that's certainly something that we can continue to talk about. Is there, if there's an area, for example, that is, quite high risk with a number of important values below it, is that something that would hurt? And if the answer is no, we'll investigate together, the potential to fund, projects such as this. I mean, there's always trade-offs. You end up, there's always the potential to introduce invasive species, no matter how hard you try and pick the right seed mix. There's also, when it comes to mulching, there's the potential that, you can be seen to be adding fuel to the land base. These are things like wood chips, straw, that sort of thing, right? And so you always have to balance the effectiveness of the treatment with the trade-offs of the potential deleterious effects that you might get from that same treatment. So, I think that's something that we want to continue to investigate within the context of those recovery tables. And those tables would consist of representatives from the First Nations and the SLRT, as well as potential other interested parties and or community groups.
Thanks, Trevor. Okay. I am not seeing any new questions come through. So maybe with that, I can look at bringing this this town hall event to a end. So first and foremost, I want to thank everyone in attendance for taking time out of their schedules this evening to join us. And thank you again to all the participants that did raise questions. I really appreciate everybody bringing those questions and comments forward. Again, Rod, thank you very much for joining us as well this evening, as well as giving that presentation on the Casper Creek fire. I think it was very well done, and really appreciate the recommendations that you were able to pull forward there.
Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, the objective was to really share that geotechnical report and answer any questions that folks might have with that report. However, that being said, I understand that some folks might have some lingering questions, potentially about their own properties. So we did publish in the Q&A section some contacts for you to follow up specifically with. And those are contacts from Ministry of Forest, from EMCR, Emergency Management, as well as the SLRD. So please, if you do have those specific questions, feel free to reach out to those folks. With that, I'd like to see if there was any other remarks from Jen over at the SLRD, or anyone else that's on the line if they would like to share any closing remarks.
Sorry about that.
No
Thank you
worries.
very much. Sorry, little delay. On behalf of the staff and board at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, we're very, very grateful to ministry staff for being here tonight to answer the questions of our community and to share this report with us. We understand that this has been a really difficult time for people with a lot of uncertainty, and that unfortunately leads to a lot of anxiety. And so we are certainly continuing to engage with ministry staff. We will continue to engage with the community as much as possible. Please reach out if you do have questions that we can help connect you with ministry staff or with support services. We do understand that this is not just it's not just a wildfire, but this is also an impact to people's livelihoods and to families' well-being. And so we do we are here for you, and we really, really appreciate your engagement and your support and your patience through this process. And I'll turn it back to you. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thanks, Jen. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for participating. And maybe with that, we can go ahead and close this town hall. As a reminder, we are doing another event tomorrow evening on the Downton Lake Wildfire. So if there is interest, please join us again tomorrow evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.